I had just come back from Arizona from a trip and literally saw posts on our Armenian report and newspapers and whatnot showing pictures of those schools that I had helped renovate and fix, now completely destroyed.
Hey there. Welcome back to Talktivism, the show about finding stable ground in an unstable world. Here, I talk to artists, activists, and anybody else who needs to be heard about navigating life and finding purpose through their experiences and the issues that matter most to them. Whenever a conversation needs to happen, Talktivism's where you can find it. So sit back, relax, and let's talk to each other. Besides, until Elon Musk gets us to Mars, we're kind of stuck on the same planet together anyway.
We're starting off this season with a conversation that's especially hard, but all the more necessary. Today, I'm talking with Taleen Khatchadourian, an Armenian woman deeply affected by the struggle of the Armenian people. It's a struggle for justice long since ignored, as far back as 1915, where roughly 1.5 million ethnic Armenians were murdered in Western Armenia, land that today is considered Eastern Turkey, in the infamous Armenian Genocide. But to this day, the Armenian people are still under attack. They struggle to survive while bordered by Turkey and Azerbaijan, two countries whose governments have sworn to take their land by force and destroy them in the process. And on July 12, 2020, Azerbaijan broke a UN ceasefire treaty and began attacking Armenia again, with the attacks going ignored and unreported by the international community. It happened again just 10 days later on July 22nd. At her breaking point, Taleen published a video on IGTV to make some noise and get people's attention. She expected it to get ignored, but instead, it went viral. Now with over 67,000 views and counting on her video, we reached out to Taleen to talk about the plight of the Armenian people and what all of us can do to help.
I'm glad to have you with me today. And if you enjoy the conversation, please do subscribe, leave a comment, and like the episode. Anyway, enjoy the show.
Ready?
Yeah. Yep. Yes. Okay. Welcome. This is Taleen. She's an Armenian woman who has been very heavily affected by events that are happening currently. We're going to get into the actual details of the, frankly, extremely insidious shit that's going down. And she knows a lot more about it than I do. So I'm very happy to have her on to teach us about this, because this is frankly disgusting that it's not being talked about more, but that's what we're here to do.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor. So I don't know, for the audience sake and for anyone who's listening and watching, I guess, the Armenian community around the world has been going through generations of denial, of crimes against humanity against our people, and it starts from as early as 1915. And during that time, the Ottoman Empire essentially sent their own soldiers to kill and wipe out all of our Armenian people. And you have to understand, geographically, we are located in an area that's predominantly either was part of either the Soviet Union on one side, and then we're surrounded by Muslim countries all around us, and we're a Christian country. So having that kind of, I guess you want to call it bullying, all of most
Right.
of our existence.
Not surrounded by allies.
Absolutely. And so when this mission was carried out, 1.5 million Armenians died. They first attacked men in high positions, government, political people, religious, and anyone who was a doctor, anyone who had any sort of education. They were eliminated first, and then they turned to the women and children. Women and children were raped and tortured, and then they were sent into the desert to die. there's so much evidence documenting these events. Pictures of soldiers holding decapitated heads of the people that they killed like trophies. Pictures of bones of people were recovered years later and are now found in a museum in Armenia dedicated to the genocide. But during that time, these monstrosities were being reported. They were being reported in news, whether it was in England, whether it was in France, whether it was in America, in Australia. These killings were being reported and nobody was doing anything about it. And our people had to flee. Whoever survived, they had to flee to the surrounding areas, some of which had to let go of their identity completely because they found themselves in Turkey, which was at the time they're basically going into the arms of the enemy, and had to pretend that they were Turkish so that they wouldn't get killed. They let go of their faith in public, but they secretly kept their faith and their culture, but they essentially had to hide while they were living just so that they could survive. And moving forward, the history of our country, we've just never had a chance to breathe, even since then. We fell under the Soviet rule because they were literally our only allies and were the only country that could protect us. But unfortunately, that created so much other difficulty in our country. Like we only barely found our independence, but like 20 something years ago. And we've had to continuously go through these situations where we are being attacked by these surrounding countries and defending our land. And after the genocide, most of our land was taken away. If you look at geographically maps of what the Armenian Empire used to be and what it is now, we have probably like 1/20th of the land left. And one of them being an icon for our country is the mountain Ararat, which is now currently found in Turkish borders. But Ararat is a symbol of our country, and it's a symbol that dates back even to biblical times of Christianity. And the fact that you can see Ararat from everywhere in Armenia. When you go to Armenia, and you could be anywhere in that country and you can see the mountain from afar. And we look at it with such sadness, knowing that we can never be reunited with it. It doesn't belong to us anymore.
Right.
And if you go back to looking at Armenian art or books or our ancient history, everything, it's literally like the symbol of our country, and yet it's not even in our borders. So currently the situation is there's so much hostility coming from Azerbaijan, and they're fighting over land that was given back to us that they claim is theirs. And it's just literally a battle of land. But unfortunately, it kind of goes deeper than that, because they're attacking us all over the world. This week alone, we lost young soldiers who are but 18, 19 years old, who have never held a gun in their life, who don't know what they're doing, and they're dying because Armenia is a poor country. We don't have the financial resources to defend ourselves. And countries like America, they don't fund our military like they do with Azerbaijan.
Right.
They don't. We are an already poor country trying to defend what we can. And when you think about the real reasons behind it, it's just to conquer. And it's like at this day and age, when we're living in this modern time where these things really shouldn't be acceptable whatsoever, how is it possible that mainstream media is not even educating people about what's going on? How is it that people are literally being slaughtered, and just because it's not on our shores doesn't mean that it doesn't matter? You know, it just makes you question, like, what's newsworthy,
right.
You know?
I feel like the world seems to be caught up, and maybe it's a Western world sort of thing, but definitely caught up in this idea of this is so far outside what they consider possible that they just shut down because they can't even comprehend this sort of almost primal destruction.
Very primal.
You know what? When we talk about America falling apart now, you know, it's like, oh my God, there was rioting. That is our definition of the country is falling apart. Not people are being murdered in the streets over land. And it's hard to, I would say it's hard to comprehend. I mean, it's obviously it's hard for me to comprehend. And this is, I'm pretty shaken just hearing this.
Yeah. And it's not easy. And I think what is important right now is trying your best to come from a place of compassion and understanding, even though you may not fully understand what's going on, kind of tapping into like the human side of it. Imagine if this was happening here. The world would know about it and would probably stop it before it continued. But these attacks started from July 12th when they bombed a bordering town in the northern parts of Armenia. And I have personally been there, and I'm personally very active in my community. I've gone back to the country, volunteering through charity groups, and we help rebuild schools. And I had just come back from Arizona from a trip and literally saw posts on our Armenian report and newspapers and whatnot, showing pictures of those schools that I had helped renovate and fix, now completely destroyed. These are kindergartens, and they know.
But they still destroyed the schools. Like the kids had nothing, there was no fault.
Absolutely. And this isn't even about, it's clear that it's not about just the land. It's about them wanting to wipe us out completely.
Genuine extermination.
And I believe it was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Turkish president essentially announced in a public setting that after centuries of denying the genocide, and first of all, they've never given us any acceptance or even announced the word genocide. They deny us that, and they have for 105 years. But he literally announced that we're going to finish what our grandfathers started. So here you have the leader of a nation who has been part of a regime and knowingly has denied this genocide, but then kind of shot himself in the foot by saying what he said.
Right.
Not only are you with that statement admitting that you did,
like, you know what their goals were.
Yeah, you did what you did and you've denied it this long, but now you're telling your people that you're going to do it again and you're not going to stop until it's done.
Right. Like, we did nothing, but we're going to do it again.
And we're not going to stop until the deed is done.
And I think what shakes me so much is when you mentioned at first, right, in like 1915, when all this happened, and it's very easy to compartmentalize that as, you know, that's the past. You know, even the Holocaust, it's all old history and we've moved on.
Sorry to cut you off. Before you continue, the one really profound thing is that when you talk about the Holocaust, there is a quote by Hitler that says, "But who remembers the Armenians?"
Really?
Yes. And,
oh my God.
And his justification to say, I can get away with this because who remembers what happened to the Armenians anyway? And it's funny enough because we had the First World War very similarly around that time. So you ask yourself, how much of this has been predetermined and how much was, it was an excuse that they were just casualties of the war. Armenia was not heavily involved in
Right.
the World War.
They didn't have anything to do with that.
Nothing to do with it whatsoever. So I'm sorry, since you brought it up, I just wanted to point it out to just share that information because it's been known for a long time.
Right. No, thank you very much. Yeah, I was mainly thinking how it's so easy to think like the Armenian genocide. It happened so long ago. It's done. It's over now. The world has moved past it. When maybe like we've moved past it, but the world has not. Where it actually matters, they have not at all moved past it, and they're still doing it.
Absolutely. And I think moving past what exactly, I think we're more desensitized to it. And it is happening again. And it does hit home for me. It hits home for me because my grandmother was a survivor of the genocide. My grandmother was 5 years old. And unfortunately, I was way too young to have had a conversation with her about this. I was maybe 2 when she had passed away. But from the only thing that my dad has talked to me about it, I don't know that she even openly talked to him about what she went through. But she was 5 years old, and I am pretty damn certain that her family was killed in front of her. I don't know how many family members she had. But she was tortured. The Ottoman soldiers literally took a hot iron rod and poked out her eye. She was 5. Like, if you can imagine a 5-year-old little girl right now, not only just witnessing her parents probably tortured and killed in front of her. I honestly don't know if she had any siblings, but even if that, and then to have to physically go through that trauma, I honestly don't even know if they raped her either, but they were raping women and children, little children. And she was rescued by French soldiers that were in the area. And you can look it up. It's the history of the Near East Relief. They were English and French soldiers that actually knew what was happening, and they were the only ones that cared to come and help us. And they rescued as many people as they could. And if those soldiers didn't come, they probably would have killed my grandmother too. And so any orphan that was found by these English and French soldiers, they were taken to Egypt. And essentially all those orphans grew up together and created a new community in Egypt, never returning home ever again.
So the impacts of even the murder of the parents of these children are grown up now, right?
Most survivors have already passed away. I think we only have like a handful of people left. It's 105 years ago. So
that's fair.
Anyone who was super young at that time is almost passed away. I think we only have like 5 left in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the kind of thing that has generational ripple effects.
Absolutely, because Armenians have now become nomads. We don't have a home anymore. All of these people had to create homes in different places, and they wonder why. Like, oh, Armenians are all around the world. Well, why?
Right. It's like it's because they don't have a home.
We had to flee. We have Armenians in Argentina. We have Armenians in Africa, all throughout the Middle East. Wherever they would take us, we fled. And whoever stayed behind went through a whole other experience, having to stay in that country and then be under the USSR at the time. So, yeah, we've literally never had a home. And that's why it's so important for us to fight for it now, because we've already been through so much just to keep that little piece of land that we have. And to now, in 2020, have to experience it again. And it's not even just happening in our country. They're sending messages all around the world for the Azeri people to attack us. Armenian people in Moscow have been pulled over and beaten up in their car. Men who are in restaurants are being ganged up by 10 Azeris who are just sitting having a meal, and they are being beaten black and blue for what?
From what I understand, right, what I saw in your story, like this stuff, it's not just topical. Like this is yesterday.
Yeah.
Literally, it probably happening again today, right now.
Mm-hmm. every single day we're getting news from the people in the area who are brave enough to record and find them. And funny enough, most of these videos we're actually getting from the Azeri people because they're posting them with pride.
They're proud of that.
They're proud of that. And there was a video, I don't know who the gentleman in it was, but from my understanding, it was a message from Turkey. I don't know if it was the general or who it was specifically, so don't quote me on it. But sure. He was speaking to, it was a video call, like a FaceTime. And these Azeri men were reporting that they did what they could. They beat up a few people, but they're afraid they're going to get arrested and deported or get kicked out or whatnot. And this Turkish person was telling them, keep doing the work, kill them all, and you will come back to our country. We will see it. We will see that it happens, that you come back as heroes. And they're posting these videos on social media with pride. They're posting it as a message to the rest of us to say, be afraid. We're coming after you, and we're not going to stop until we get you all. And they're posting it happily, like, watch what we're doing, and we're getting away with it. So it's like, when they're not even hiding it themselves, how can you turn around and say, you know, there's always an argument that each side has instigated it. Our people do not instigate. They don't instigate.
And instigation doesn't justify murder.
Instigation with what, though? When we already know we don't have the resources to fight them off, why would we instigate? It's not like we all of a sudden got a new ally that we're like, hey, we get to pick back at you. I mean, there's no logical reason.
It's just trying to survive. It's not trying to get back at anybody.
Absolutely. And last night, before I went to sleep, I was very disturbed. I came across basically the law enforcement of Azerbaijan, their like official account. So imagine the police department of the United States having an Instagram account.
Oh man, I don't think I would like the shit on that.
Oh, but I'm trying to put it into perspective. What they are doing is the equivalent of this. Imagine the United States Police Department posting pictures of George Floyd's dead body on Instagram in pride, celebrating what they did to him. This is what the Azerbaijan crew are doing on their own official page. They are posting pictures of our 18 and 19-year-old soldiers that they've captured and tortured and killed, and parading it on Instagram. Now, the other question of why Instagram is even allowing that to begin with is a whole other debate.
Like, because it's basically encouraging it. If the entire world sees this and does nothing.
And funny enough, they've blurted out and have a warning to say, warning, like extremely sensitive content or whatever. Like, I want to see, you have to
God
click.
God forbid someone see it. Mm-hmm. You know, not like God forbid it happen.
That's where my anger and rage comes from, because it's like, at what point do we consider this newsworthy? At what point do we say enough is enough? I mean, if this was happening here in America on our shores, I damn well guarantee people would be marching on the streets and saying, stop, enough. What is the government doing to stop this? What is the world doing to stop this? Nothing.
Right. I mean, it's disturbing when I think of how easy it is for the American public to, you know, get behind a cause the second there's video evidence of it. But there is more than enough video evidence of this. Mm-hmm. But it's met with apathy. I don't understand it. I can't explain it. I can't comprehend it. I mean, I guess the best we can really do is talk about it and try to get the actual news more out, because the more people hear about it, the more they have to acknowledge, like, you know what, maybe this is real. Like, maybe the government of a country is capable of doing this, even if we might not want to think that because we're in this sort of insulated bubble where everything just comes down to, you know, lawmakers bickering in a Congress. But shit gets realer than that.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, having the conversation is so important. And you just said something so important is like, I don't think people can fathom that something like this could even be happening right now. So it's so much easier to ignore it. It's so much less painful for you to actually admit that these horrible things are actually happening right now.
Right.
And the attack started on July 12 and 13, and there were a few days of ceasefire, and then they started again on the 21st and 22nd, which was yesterday, right? No, what are we today? I've lost
Honestly,
track.
I don't even remember what day it is.
But it's happening. Like this week, it's been happening, and every single day we get pictures.
25th.
So yeah, just not even middle of this week. And that was when I had just come back from Arizona, and I was so overwhelmed. You know, I'm out there trying to find peace with nature and disconnect from the world for a moment just to breathe, and come back to find these pictures being paraded online. And then we had a protest in Los Angeles in downtown, and it was a peaceful protest with bunch of Armenians that, you know, went out to try to speak up and show people what's happening right now. And once the protest was done, as they were leaving, Azeri people showed up in their cars and they started to attack men and women in their cars.
In Los Angeles?
In Los Angeles. And it wasn't even reported.
Fucking Christ.
And it wasn't even reported. Like, and that's where it boils my blood, because it's like, this year alone, we've all gone through so much trauma. I mean, I'm not surprised if we all have some sort of PTSD coming through in a few years. But
got flashbacks to this for the rest of our lives.
I mean, and why is it that the people outrage over one incident but not the other? And that's what makes me ask that question is, you know, for people who are activists and want to promote, you know, being humanitarian and all this stuff. I mean, what is a humanitarian? Does it choose color or race or where? It doesn't choose. We're all human. So why are we not being open and speaking about these wounds openly with everyone right now? Why is the media selective on choosing who they get to talk about? I mean, is this any less worthy of being spoken about?
Right. It's maybe it doesn't fit into whatever narrative is popular at the moment. Mm-hmm. But that feels even worse, because that means that people only matter if they're popular.
Yeah. And especially here in the American Armenian community, year after year after year after year after year since we've migrated here and created influential community, we've heard president after president after president promise and promise and promise to recognize the genocide. And then come every year, we march on April 24th because that is the Remembrance Day that we honor our lost ancestors. And every year on April 24th, when the president is supposed to release a statement, and we hold our breaths waiting anxiously for him to say the word genocide, and he doesn't. And I'm talking from all the way back from Clinton onwards, or probably even sooner than that.
Right.
Every single time, politically, they use those words as a way to gain the trust of the Armenian people to vote for them. And every year they fail us. Every year they deny us that acceptance, and it really has to do with political agenda, because America is connected to Turkey politically, and they will never admit to it. And it's like a game of chess. Worse, I feel like it's like Game of Thrones, literally,
it's like a game
dangling.
of chess where all you have are like a couple pawns left, and the other side has every single piece on the board.
100%.
It's not a fair game.
It's not a fair game, and we're just tired. It's like, how much can one group of people take, you know? And I am but one person who feels this frustration, and there's many of us. We all feel this frustration. And the message from our people is, what's changed in 100 years? We've always defended our country and we'll keep defending our country. The point is why? Why are mothers burying their 19-year-old sons right now? Why are they saying goodbye to their kids to go fight for what? For what? There's no reason other than true hatred towards us.
Right.
And I don't know how this is going to end. I really don't. And we have brothers and sisters here who are all around the world outside of Armenia who are saying that if it comes to the crunch, we will go and fight with you. I mean, what other country has had to go through that? And it's like, this isn't just with Armenia, though. There's so much happening just in that region, period. Whatever is happening in Lebanon. The genocide that happened in Syria that people don't talk about.
Is that the Syrian refugees?
Absolutely. Why do you think that they fled? They were being killed. And they fled to Armenia. Armenia welcomed them with open arms. We have a huge Syrian community in Armenia now because they understand what it's like.
There's actual empathy.
100%. But nobody cares. Who's talking about it? Who's talking about it?
Yeah, and I honestly don't think the Syrian refugee crisis was ever solved. People
No.
just stopped caring.
Yeah,
It wasn't popular anymore,
absolutely.
and it just fell off the face of conversation.
I had friends that were living there and had to really flee. And their families lived in fear every day. At a certain point, they say the sound of the bombs sound relieving to us because we're at this point of what life are we living anyway? Maybe it's better if we just die. Yeah, and it's like how painful.
God.
You can't wrap your head around how the fuck can I be living here in California in peace, and this is what's happening around the world. This is what's happening close to home and even in my home. I can't keep my mouth shut anymore. And so it's like speaking up about it, does that put me at risk of getting, attacked on social media by the opposition? Of course. I don't care though, because it's gotten to the point where it's ridiculous. And if you truly care about people in general and you truly want to make a change in this world, it's so important to have these heavy conversations where we not just taught that about the recent movement that has been happening in America.
Right.
It's about fucking time, that's for sure. But again, it's kind of like, how do you speak about one thing and just completely ignore the very same thing happening somewhere else?
Right. It's the same exact issue. It's just not here. Mm-hmm. So people compartmentalize it differently.
Yeah.
We think that just because maybe technology has changed or, our grandparents are different than we were, that things have changed. But the only thing that's changed is the technology. The actual problem is exactly the same.
It's so funny you say that. So get this. One of my friends in Armenia that I keep in contact with because I want to actively know what's going on and what they need help with. And they were talking to us about the first few days of when the attack started and after they bombed some schools and homes and towns. The Azeri people or army are sending high-tech drones at night with infrared technology to scout out where the places are. So they know the exact coordinates of where they're going to throw their bombs next.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. And so they actually had apparently, there was this 10-year-old kid that grabbed his dad's rifle and shot that drone down. So they were super happy about it. But what you said about that unfair game of chess, look at what you're dealing with. This country who is literally using basic weaponry because we don't have anything high tech.
Right.
I mean, we may as well be using bows and arrows at this point. And, the Azeri government is using the highest technology to accurately eliminate us.
Right.
You know?
Like I have one gun and you have as many drones as you want. I can't hide because you can use infrared heat signatures to figure out where everyone is. It is the odds are so unfair. It's impossible to win without help.
Absolutely. And they're receiving help. So when you say that it's off of our shores and it's easy for people to desensitize, I 100% agree with you, but it actually hits home a lot closer than you think. Research how much money the American government funds to Turkey and to Azerbaijan. I think it's about $1.3 billion.
Like, yeah, I'm assuming like annually.
So $1.3 billion of our country's budget is going towards funding people who are killing Armenians. So you're funding murderers, really. And even if we had half of that being sent to us, again, like, do you know how much $1.3 billion would help my country?
Right.
Like, do you know how many mouths would be fed with that kind of money? I mean, let's not even go to there. Let's talk about America, period. That money could be going back to the people here.
Right. Or we could just give more of it to the military. We need tanks and whatnot, or whatever the hell the military uses it for.
I mean, I'm sure there's many ways that we could be using that money better. But it does hit home because each and every single one of us are essentially paying those taxes, and we're paying for this to happen. And that's how you can stop it. That's how you can, by demanding to your government. And we have a petition going right now demanding that they cut the funding until Turkey and Azerbaijan honors the UN Treaty of Ceasefire and Peace, and which they're not honoring it. And that's kind of the political game at the moment, because when we're so far, that's the only way we can help. It's like, if you can't beat them at the war, then let's cut the funding. Let's cut the source of how they're able to, the means that they have to be able to even attack us to begin with.
Right.
Where do you think they're getting all this weaponry from?
Yeah. And I'll put a link to that petition
Thank
that you
you.
just mentioned in the description of this.
Thank you.
Because there's literally no better place I can think of where I could put that.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is that the Azeri side, they have like, what do they call them? Like bots, like those auto bots.
Oh man.
So they have another petition going for themselves, basically, to say like,
interesting.
and they've used these bots to be able to get these signatures overnight.
And
like,
they're not real signatures.
No, they're not.
They're just programs making it seem like there's actual support.
Absolutely. And as of this morning, I counted it, and I think we're up to like 6,500 signatures, and we need 100,000 signatures for them to even entertain the idea. So I really applaud you guys to please sign that petition, because our people really need help. The world needs to step in, and if the heads of the governments of these Western countries are literally going to stand by and do nothing, it's really only up to us people. And the Armenian people can only do so much. We've been crying the same cries for 100 years. We've been chanting the same chants for 100 years, and no one's listening to us. So I need to reach everybody else who has a heart, who's willing to listen, who's willing to really understand and come from a place of our human nature of we should be helping each other, not destroying one another.
Right.
And that's all I can really say, you know?
Like it matters because we're all humans. Mm-hmm. And this is a disgusting thing for humans to do to another group of people. And it's just because it's not a socially popular group to be marginalized does not mean they're not still humans, and they don't have every ounce of right to respect and to live their life as anyone else. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's even, the chess game, right?
Absolutely.
Except in this case, winning for Azerbaijan is complete extermination of the Armenian people. And for the Armenian people, winning is just literally not dying.
Yeah. Yep. It's literally, how can we stay alive? And that's the point. It's like, you look back and you just think about what we've been going through. Are you okay? It's okay.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'll cut that part.
It's okay. Breathe.
Okay, so we're back. Choked on water a bit, but we're good now. The last thing I remember is I was saying that for Azerbaijan, the goal is to exterminate the Armenian people. For the Armenian people, the goal is to literally not die.
Oh, yes.
So two completely different goals.
Two completely different games. I mean, and one of my friends said, like, when is it ever going to stop? Like, there has to be at least one generation that comes into this country that can live in peace, right? Like, isn't it going to happen one day? And I don't have an answer because I really don't know. And I would like to think that in my lifetime that can happen. I would like to think that before I die, we can have a peaceful home to go to.
Right. There's more opportunities, and it is easier than it has ever been in history to talk to people, to connect with them, and to honestly prove that this is important. Mm-hmm. The more people hear about this, the more they can actually comprehend it.
Absolutely. And accept its existence.
Yeah, that's, I think, the biggest one. That people don't want to accept that this is happening.
And it's funny enough because we have almost 100,000 Armenians that show up to these marches that we do in April, and it is to bring awareness to the genocide, and it happens every year in Los Angeles. And we walk from Little Armenia in Hollywood all the way to the Turkish consulate, and we march in front of them, and we demand for justice, and the news covers it, and it happens every single year, and nothing ever really gets talked about outside of that one day. Like, hundreds gathered in Hollywood again today for the Armenian genocide, and da-da-da-da.
It's treated as a fad.
Yeah, and I understand because the government's unwillingness to actually acknowledge it officially, and it really depends all on America, because as soon as America says yes, so many other countries will follow. And we have had so much recognition happen over the last maybe even 10 years. You know, we have people and politically making such movement for our country, but there's only so much we can do. And so there are tons of Americans who are intrigued, and they stop us while we're marching. Like, what are you guys marching for? Like, what's going on? And it's our duty to explain to them and talk to them. But whether those people go and share that information with their people too, that's a whole other question. Right. And it's one thing to understand and acknowledge it and feel for the people. It's also another thing to stand with them and acknowledge what's going on and fight with them. You know, it really is a beautiful thing when you see humans in general coming together for a greater good cause. And we've witnessed that, especially this year. We've witnessed the power of people and how their voices can make a difference.
Right.
So why aren't we talking more about everything? Let's talk more about everything that's wrong with this world, and let's one by one fix it.
Right. There's a whole all or nothing mentality where it's like, if we don't know the first step of how to solve it, then we'll just back off completely, focus on something else where maybe, you know, the solutions feels closer, and we're going to hyper focus on that. It's this singular focus where you can't acknowledge the fact that just because you may not know the solution right now doesn't mean it's not worth talking about and signing petitions about. Like, actually putting work in to understand it and to help stop it. Because it's not even just a violation of human rights. It's genocide.
Yeah, and I mean, how many genocides do we talk about? How many genocides do we openly know of?
I mean, I don't hear anything. I mean, I've heard the closest equivalent is when people will liken things to genocide. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, it's kind of like, you know, if the police were just stopping black people and killing them. It's like a genocide. But it's not like this is a genocide.
Absolutely. And that's what I hate, because they pussyfoot around it. And it's like, no, say it. Like, when they say his name, say the fucking word. It is genocide, and it's been happening since the dawn of time. So when are we going to stop it? And when are we first going to recognize it and then stop it?
Right. Because I've heard friends tell me about the Armenian genocide and how, you know, there's no one, history books don't talk about it. Government officials don't talk about it. And when I think about it, like, yeah, I've literally never heard about this from a history book or from any person in a position of power. It's not even on the radar.
That's so interesting because I didn't grow up in America. I was born and raised in Australia, and I was a part of the Armenian community there. So I was fortunate enough that my parents sent me to an Armenian school. And in our English history books, actually, you're right, there weren't. And I was learning about Australian history at that time, so not really much American history, but we have our own Armenian history books, and every year in Armenian class, like, we would learn history too about our people. And that's the only reason why I know. So imagine other Armenian kids who don't go to Armenian school, and it's a part of their history that they're not even learning about. There are a lot of our people that they know about the genocide, but I don't know how deeply they know the details of it themselves. And there's a disconnect, you know, being outside of your country and growing up somewhere that you're learning about world matters and you're learning about all these different aspects of history, but you're not given the opportunity to even learn about your own people too, you know? And this is something that happened in a time where war was happening all over. So why are we not talking about the existence of what this is and what actually really happened, and teaching people that this is very real? You know, it's not mythology here. We're not talking about Zeus and the gods and something that we can't tangibly see. There are historical documents and telegrams and pictures of soldiers being hung, of soldiers having their tongues cut out, of heads being displayed on a shelf in the Turkish government. And these are the heads of all of our generals and soldiers of the Armenians of the time. I mean, the horrific images that we've seen in that time, and they're all like, you know, that like black and white, sepia color.
Right.
It's not in color. It's of the time. That's how they took pictures. But they took the time to put these heads together and take pictures with them. They took the time to lay the bodies of the women and children that they just finished raping and torturing and line them up so that they can take a picture next to it and say, look at the great work we did today.
Yeah.
And these cameras were not your phone where you can quickly click it.
Right.
They were old school.
Like, they put in the effort to say, I want to remember this.
Yeah.
And I want, you know, my people to remember this. I want this to be documented. And they basically just fucking got away with it.
Yeah. And yet they deny it. But, you know, thanks to the stupid president of Turkey, he just kind of shot himself in the foot by saying he wanted to finish what their grandfather started. I mean, if that's not proof enough, I don't know what is. And at this point, it's like, you're just ignorant if you're going to ignore it. And, you know, some people will. Some people won't have the capacity to understand what this really means. And bless your souls if you want to live in this, you know, bubble world that you wish that we existed, that I wish too. Trust me, I do. It pains me to see because I look at the pictures of these young soldiers that are dying right now today, and it just takes me back to that moment. And it's literally history repeating itself. These pictures that they're posting up on social media, it's literally what the Ottoman Empire was doing back then when they were done with the corpses of our people. And they just thought that it was so funny to just take that picture and promote it. And that's what the Azeri people are doing right now. And
nothing's changed.
Nothing has
changed. But now it's easier.
Now it's easier, and now it's we have a duty now. It's easier for us to spread our message too. And for everybody who is listening, who's watching, educate yourselves. Educate yourselves on what's going on. Educate yourselves on the history of this region and its people, and understand that this is very real. I had a few soldiers send me a voice message this morning, thanking me how much it warms their heart to know that the diaspora is in support of them in some way, and is using their voice as a message to share the pain that they're experiencing. But yeah, like I said, they literally just say, like, in Armenian, they're like, "Hey sister, this is how it's always been. Nothing's different for us, and we'll die if we have to, but nothing's going to happen to Armenia." And I tell them it's not about that. I know Armenia will be okay. It's about your lives.
Right. Like, it's more than just land. It's people are what make the land matter.
Absolutely. And it's like, when are we going to have a chance to just live in peace? Like, literally.
Right, that shouldn't be too much to ask for.
No. I mean, it's just sad. It's just sad that that's kind of like their reality of, like, well, this is just life and we're just going about it, but thank you so much for your well wishes. And it's like, no.
Genuinely desensitized to the fact that someone is actively trying to kill you personally.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, it happens. Like, no, it doesn't happen. This is abnormal and you should not be okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Age doesn't matter. I mean, whether they're the older soldiers or younger soldiers, but people should be able to live their lives and in peace in general. But 19-year-olds should not be holding guns and trying to fight for their country involuntarily.
Right.
Mothers should not have their kids ripped away from them to have to go and fight this battle that's so unnecessary to begin with.
Right. Everything about it is completely backwards.
100%. There's so many different angles that you can look at it, and in every single way it's wrong. And the funny thing is that people say, oh, well, it's your word against theirs, and they say you instigated and you say they instigated. And it's like, look at the facts, though. Look at the facts. Like, does it make sense that Armenia would instigate? Logically, does it sound to you like they have any position to checkmate anything?
The people with no power who are getting murdered in the street, they're the ones that are really trying to kick the dragon's nest there.
Yeah. And they're the ones who are posting pictures of these captive soldiers that are dead and promoting those pictures. They are the ones around Moscow literally hunting down Armenians. It happened 2 nights ago. And to the point where the Russian military got involved and arrested 57 men who were part of a ring that were hunting down Armenians to kill them and to bully them and to torture them. There were fruit and vegetable stands in Azerbaijan, Azeri people who had their own fruit and vegetable stands in like a farmer's market in Moscow. And they had a sign that said, "No service to Armenian people." And a Russian man saw this sign and was furious. And he beat the shit out of that guy and was like, wake the fuck up and stop being horrible. But it kind of warmed us to feel like, Russians and Armenians have had to kind of coexist for such a long time, and they love each other. There's a wonderful relationship there too, but it was great to know that other people are standing up for us too.
Right, there's finally some support.
But it's like, it's not, not that it doesn't matter. Every little bit matters, but it's not in a strong, powerful way that we need right now.
It's just not enough. Well, it's obviously appreciated, but there needs to be more.
Yeah. We had an Armenian school in San Francisco vandalized 2 days ago, completely terrorized and graffiti all over it. And it was by the Azeri people, and they claim it happily.
Okay.
So, I mean, to me, it's like, oh, there was another video that I saw. I'm sharing things that I've been seeing these last few weeks that's why I've been so riled up. Like, we had a video that was posted again on an Azeri account, and it was a teacher in a school, and these kids were probably in kindergarten, and she's giving them a lesson in history, and she's talking to them about who are our enemies, and all these little kids loudly say, Armenia.
Oh, God damn it.
And where is, who can tell me on the map where the land of our enemy is? And all of them point to it.
Jesus Christ. Even Americans don't know where Armenia is.
And she's asking the kids, why do we hate them? Why do we hate our enemy? Because they stole our land, they kill our soldiers, and they stole our gold. And they're brainwashing these kids from a young age. And after my video went viral, I literally had Azeri people cussing me out, trying to sabotage, trying to report, trying to do everything that they can to shut me up. And I look at them and they're young, like teenagers.
Oh my gosh. They don't even have a bone to pick.
But they're being brainwashed from the minute that they're born.
It's not fucking fair.
So I don't even have hatred towards them. I don't. I just have compassion because it must suck to believe such horrible things and not be able to decide for yourself.
Right.
Not to be able to give a chance for kids to grow up to have some sense of love and compassion for other people, including whether they're their enemies or not. But you're teaching these kids and you're filling them with hate. When we say hatred is taught, that is like the best example.
It's literally being taught.
Yeah.
Like it's I would say the most pure form of indoctrination. Mm-hmm. You send kids to school and they get taught, this is the enemy, you should hate them. They're teaching them how to hate, quite frankly. Without that, I would hope, at least, that without that, no sane human being could ever come to that conclusion.
And yet they do. They so vigilantly hate us. And they've just been filled with this idea that we are the ones that tried to exterminate them and we deserve to not exist anymore. And that's why they hate us all around the world. It doesn't matter where they exist. And it's like, what are you hating us for, really? What are you hating us for?
I can't say that there's a single logical reason.
There really isn't. And we don't do the same thing. That's the point. It's like our people look at you and we're looking at them like, man, the only anger and hatred comes because we see how they're torturing our very existence and what they're doing to these soldiers and disrespecting their lives in such a profound way. It's like, I don't understand. At some point, they have to wake up, and I hope and I pray that they do. I hope that these kids at some point wake up and realize that hatred is not the way. Right. But, you don't see that from our people. If we come across an Azeri person who's willing to have a conversation, we would sit down with them, make them some coffee, and have a conversation with them. The violence and anger comes because we feel like no one is listening.
Right.
I mean,
it's completely one-sided. There's no animosity from the Armenians toward the Azerbaijan people,
other than defense.
Right. And even then, that's not malice for their existence. It's just, please, if you can, just stop killing us. That'd be pretty great.
That'd be awesome. And even though we don't have the cool new high-tech weapons you do, we can fuck some shit up too. But we're only going to do it if we have to.
It's all self-defense.
Mm-hmm. And it's just not stopping. That's the problem. And it's like every day I wake up with anxiety being like, how many more soldiers did we lose last night? How many more kids did we get injured last night? They don't care. They don't care if you're 2 or if you're 200. They don't care.
Right.
And this is just, it has to stop. Like there's no other question about it. And all I can say is that I really hope that the world sees and can start speaking about it more. More so, I hope that governments in powerful positions can influence in some way for this to stop. But it has to stop. And it's not just about whether it happens on our shores or their shores or whatever. Every single human on this planet should fight for this if it ever happens again to anybody else.
Right. There's a moral obligation to stand up against this.
100%. Couldn't have put it better myself. There is a moral obligation that I don't think people are playing their part. Not enough people are having the conversation. Not enough people are trying to educate and understand them. And, you know, I posted a video in my stories on Instagram and I was literally just venting my frustration and pain, not just to the world for ignoring it, but even people in our community even that have like lost hope, you know, that don't bother speaking about it anymore because they're like, they've accepted defeat. Like no one in the world cares about us anymore.
Yeah, I mean, no one can push through 100 years of being ignored and still like have a hope that, you know, maybe this year it'll be different, because there's no evidence that it will be. Like people for some reason don't give a shit.
Yeah. And what can we say to that? It's just pure desensitization. It's pure, well, if it's not on my shores, then I don't really care. You know, right. If it's not affecting me in my day-to-day life, then ignorance is bliss. Let's just continue to put our head in the sand and pretend that it's not happening. But it is happening. It's happening, and these families deserve better. And they heavily rely on the Armenian people to donate and fund and help them. And we have spent countless years searching for projects to fix, like schools that need renovations. And I'm talking about a country that is still third world. Let's be honest. Maybe in the main cities, it's fine. It's more European, but most people in the villages, a lot of people in the villages, they don't have proper resources like we do. And not to be like graphic or anything, but these kids go to school with a hole in the ground to poop and pee in. They don't even have toilets.
Right. The basic infrastructure that just like defined hygiene for America.
100%. These are luxuries that we have here that they don't even like understand.
It's a completely different life. We can't imagine not having toilets. Like using a porta potty is just a nightmare.
Even that is a luxury for them. I mean, it's bizarre to me that in this day and age that a country could still be living like that. And the reality of it is, I mean, it's not just them. There are so many other places around the world that are dealing with this right now. Why? Like, really, why?
Honestly, I can't explain it.
Like, it's a question, though. Like, it makes you think, like, there's parts of the world that owns billions of dollars, but yet we have people essentially living in poverty.
Right. It's this profound apathy. And what's funnier to me is, you know, I feel like everyone knows, they remember growing up when parents would say, oh, you know, you better eat your food because there's starving kids in the world that would love that. It's like, well, okay, are you helping them though? Like, are you just using them as a way to guilt me into doing something that you want? And you don't actually give a shit about the starving people insofar as they don't immediately benefit you.
100%. And that's the difference between how are you playing a part in it? How are we collectively playing a part in this desensitization and ignorance of what's happening in the world? Starting from here, but also extending out to all parts. If you can reference it, just like you said, if you can reference it, then what are you actually doing about it? And that's where I am trying to be a voice to people to actively start doing something about it. It's not just about money. It's still also about having the conversation, because at least if more people are talking about it, then more people can try and figure out a solution too.
Right.
Let's focus on not talking constantly just about what happened 105 years ago. I get that. There's a part where eventually it feels like you're beating a dead horse. So yes, let's move past the genocide. Let's move past all these wars and whatnot. Let's move past it and work towards a better future. But it has to stop first,
right,
in order for us to do that.
And it's truly not beating a dead horse because it's still happening. And I think ultimately, I'm probably very naive. I feel like there is still hope because if, the Syrian refugee crisis can become a major focal point in political discussion in the last election, then it shows that Americans are capable of caring about things that happen in other countries.
I certainly hope so. I certainly do.
To me, that's like proof. Like, it's possible to care. Even if it may not be right here, the Syrian refugee crisis was a major talking point in the actual election. So there's some, modicum of hope.
Possibly. And I honestly, again, don't quote me. I don't know how much connection Syria has to Turkey or whatnot, but it's evident that the American government intends to keep Turkey as an ally. And so long as that happens, unfortunately, this conversation will not be mainstream in the political conversation ever.
I can't handle that.
Yeah. And sadly, it's a game of politics. So while we understand that now, Armenian youth are trying so hard to get involved in politics for that reason, purely to try and save our country.
Right. If that's the only thing you have left, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you know, because this is partly because I don't know that much about the background, but why exactly does the United States look so fondly upon Turkey? I
can't even answer that in exact terms because
Sure.
I don't even know. I don't even know exactly. I don't know if it's because of their geographic location in terms of, what we call Eastern Europe or Eastern Europe, but or Western Europe and Eastern Middle East or whatnot. But anyway, if it's geographical location and their interest in playing chess in other countries in that area, having an ally.
Oh man, that's just gross.
I know it is.
Just playing chess with people's lives. And not even people, whole groups of people's lives.
Exactly. I mean, again, look at your government's involvement in wars in Iran and Iraq and ignoring the turmoil that's caused. This is like a rabbit hole conversation that you could go very deep into it. But on a surface level, let's just say that they have advantage of having that connection with Turkey. And it could be for a number of different reasons too. I really don't know. But there's no other reason why year after year after year, presidents have connivingly during their election made empty promises to the Armenian people every single time, promising that they will recognize the genocide and use the word genocide. All they do is say, the killings of the Armenian people in 1915 is horrible. No.
And it's not enough.
1.5 million people is not an accident. Intentional raping and torturing of women is not an accident. That was a planned execution, and they did it thoroughly, not anticipating that France and England would get involved. If they didn't, I don't know, we may have been completely erased. I don't know.
Right.
But point is that there is so much history in this situation, and year after year, it keeps getting denied. Year after year, empty promises keep happening, and no president has ever stood up and said, yes, we're going to stand by the Armenian people, and actually followed through. So then it makes you ask the question, let's actually dig. Why is their ties to Turkey so important?
Right.
I would really applaud you all to actually look into it and have that conversation too, of why is the American government so adamant about not recognizing it?
Right. It's just fucked up. Oh, fuck. I don't even... this is... Okay.
If you have questions for me, how do you feel as someone hearing this information, as an American who is receiving this information probably for the first time, and you're like...
I would say the the first term that comes to mind is shell-shocked. I would say for the majority of the actual understanding process, my skin is primarily crawling. Yeah. I just have so many questions about like why. Yeah, that's like the none
why
of it makes any fucking sense. Like what is there to gain? Just like why? I guess just why can't people just fucking care?
Yeah.
But that's
because as I'm sharing this information, I can see the like shock in your face. So it's kind of like I know it's going to take a minute to really process it, like and fully absorb it. But I really, if there's any message that I can leave everybody with, it's don't be afraid to ask the question and don't be afraid to dig deep, because the more awareness that you bring to something, the more we can jump to focusing on the solution rather than keep talking about the problem over and over again.
Right.
We're one step closer to the solution if everybody was in the world was actually aware of what was going on and tuned in from a compassionate and empathetic point of view as a human.
Right.
And those two things are really key. And then try to do something about it. If it means having one conversation with someone, being like, hey, have you guys actually heard about what's going on in Armenia? Do any of you really know what's going on? And I think that people are afraid of having that conversation because they feel intimidated. They don't know enough about it to really speak up about it. And the only solution is know more about it.
Right.
So, and if it means to do your own deep search or look at kind of modern reporting groups that will be able to share the story, then at least in some way you're doing your part to put an end to this in some way. And if we can have people sign that petition, that would be amazing, because it actually calls this government to step in and do their duty to make sure that this country does not succeed in their mission to annihilate us.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I love everything. Well, I mean, I don't love what I'm learning.
Yes,
but,
I know.
But I love that you came here to get the message across. I feel very honored to have been able to facilitate this. And so, yeah, thank you so much for coming out. And I guess the most important thing I get from this is the Armenian genocide. It did not just happen. It is happening.
Yes.
People need to fucking give a shit.
People need to wake up and give a shit. And soon, please, because we can't afford to have more damage. We really can't.
Yeah. Well, yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For coming
it's been
on.
such an honor. Thank you.
It's other pipe. Oh my God.
Look up. Your esophagus will open up.
Okay. Well, that was embarrassing.
It happens to the best of us.